AI Product Builders podcast. Today we are excited to have Sudipta Biswas, co-founder of FloWorks, joining us. FloWorks is basically revolutionizing workflow management by integrating multiple work applications into a single efficient interface aimed at enhancing productivity and driving revenue growth. Sudipta, with his rich background in AI, product management, and risk analysis, and also as an alumni of IIT Kharagpur, brings us a unique perspective on how technology can streamline business processes. Sudipta, welcome to our Product Builders. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Lakshmi, for inviting me in. Really excited for the next half an hour.
Yeah. So, Sudipta, can you provide a brief overview of FloWorks and its role in the AI and SaaS industry?
Absolutely. So when we started FloWorks around about 2 years back, we saw an interesting phenomenon that today business data, whether it's like your internal data or customer data, these are widely distributed across different tools, different softwares, and different applications, right? Different databases. And that was secretly the reason of a large amount of inefficiencies that are currently there to run any company, any business, or any business functions, right? So we thought, like, what could be the most efficient way of eliminating this hurdle, right? And we came up with an idea where, what if we can build or design, let's say, an intelligent being, right? That can understand your way of speaking and perform those things on your behalf on these all different tools, right? So that's basically what FloWorks is. So FloWorks is an AI that sits between you and all these different business systems, tools, softwares, applications. And it doesn't just understand and find and search information for you from all these different tools, but it also performs actions, which is very highly deterministic actions on your behalf on all these different tools. So just to give an example, with FloWorks, you can, so just to summarize, so it's like a natural language interface for all your work applications, right?
Got it.
So with FloWorks, let's say you are a sales, let me give an example. Let's say if you're a sales account manager, right? FloWorks essentially helps you become more efficient in day-to-day work by up to saving more than an hour per day. Not just personal efficiency, it also helps you improve your business outcome in terms of number of deals you close, in terms of reducing your sales cycles, right? So how do you do that? A very brief example. So let's say you are an account manager, right?
Okay.
You have, let's say, sent certain quotes to a certain customer. So let's say the customer replies back, FloWorks will proactively alert you, hey, this is the email that I received from this customer, right? By the way, based on the reply of the customer, I think this is a follow-up email that you should send, right? So FloWorks alerts you of this incoming email on Slack. It also prepares an email for you, right? You can go through the email and hit send, right? So once you send, then FloWorks also asks you, hey, do you want to update in your CRM? I think these are the meeting or these are the email summary that should be updated, right?
Got it.
Again, in the tool, you can also add newer meeting summaries, or you can go ahead with FloWorks suggestions, right? But you can also, continue the conversation going, hey, just set up a meeting with this person next week and see if it's available. So what FloWorks will do, FloWorks will go to your calendar application, set up the meeting, and it will also craft another email addressing to that person saying, hey, this is a tentative email I have scheduled. Let me know if it works for you or not, right? So all these different things can be done right from your Slack, right? So that's how FloWorks sits between you and all these different tools if you're a sales account manager.
Got it. So as you mentioned, you're focused on sales management, right? Like particularly use case for salespeople. So what led you to prioritize only sales use case? Because when I think of workflow management, it applies everywhere to almost everyone. We on a day-to-day basis use a lot of tools. So do you have any plans to expand into other areas like operations, product, tech, or more?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, there's a goal. So we see FloWorks as a general purpose interface for
Mm-hmm.
almost every work application you use, whether you are a sales account manager, whether you're a product manager, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a program manager, right? Whether you're a customer success manager, right? However, obviously we are a startup, we need to be a little more focused at this point. That's a huge technical challenge as well to solve for every application. So we thought, let's first prove the metal of our tech, metal of our AI in at least one domain, right? And let's see how that sort of, tool usages, LLM being, transformative tool user works, right? That's one of the reasons we want to pick one vertical. Now, picking sales
Mm-hmm.
is also very interesting. So if you see traditionally, sales have been a domain, right, where
Yep.
efficiency, as in, time saved per rep or per account manager, is linearly tied with the outcome of the person in terms of deal closure or sales cycle, right? So let's say
Yeah.
if you can save 1 hour of a person, then it effectively might mean maybe one or two more deals per week, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
so that's a very sweet spot, right? Because as a tool, you want to be probably in a domain where you are directly affecting the top line of the company,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Because in that way you can charge more premium. However, generally speaking, I'm not saying this is true in most.
Mm.
Generally speaking, if you tend to optimize the cost of an organization, you can generally charge little less, right? You are able to charge little less money, right? As
Got
premium,
it.
right? So we thought like tool use, like, sales is that particular use case where you can charge premium by saving efficiencies and bringing more business related outcomes to the people. And because that
Mm-hmm.
directly impact the business outcomes, right? You can charge
Yeah.
more, right? So that's one of the reasons
Yeah.
we stuck with sales.
I think totally makes sense. That's one of the obviously profession which affects top line, as you mentioned. So this obviously I have read your TechCrunch article. So basically, the article mentions that your conversation with Vinod Khosla had a huge impact apparently on shaping the vision for FlowWorks. So how did this
Right.
influence translate into your approach in building and scaling FlowWorks? Like, what was your discussion?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think this dates back to probably late April, right? When we are just finishing up our YC Winter 23 batch, and uh, we had good couple of, I think more than couple, probably 3-4 rounds of discussion with multiple other people at Khosla Ventures. And the last round of conversation was with Vinod himself, right? Definitely the busy person, so we have to get
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Yeah.
an appointment with him in about 2 weeks of time. But that sort of meeting was very enriching and sort of, I would say, fundamentally shaped my view about the company and the product that we're building, right? So I'll tell you how. So before that meeting, we're still thinking ourselves as a tool that will improve efficiency of, let's say, sales as a function, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I think as what came out of the meeting, what Vinod really propelled us to think is that why are you constraining yourself to this, right? You are really
Mm-hmm.
sitting on a gold mine here, right? If you can really crack the problem of using LLM or AI as a tool user, right? Then
Yeah.
why constrain yourself just to sales or maybe just to another single domain, right? You can be the general
Got it.
purpose interface for every software on earth, right? So it's like you are
Mm-hmm.
sitting on the seminal moment where, let's say 40 years back, Apple and Microsoft revolutionized how we interact with computers using graphical user interface. Today, we had the
Yes.
opportunity to interact with computer using language-based interface through Flowy, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And that really sort of kicked in, I would say, the adrenaline in me that, okay, so if we are really building this technology, the potential is huge and we should aim likewise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in nutshell, Vinod really propelled us to think like much wider, much beyond the immediate goals of what we're building, right? Just think
Got
of the
it.
end game as building a general purpose AI that can perform actions on your behalf, right? Because if you
Yeah.
think, what really differentiates humans from, let's say, animals is obviously, cognitive and reasoning capabilities, but it's also the ability to, use different tools to our benefits, right?
Yeah.
Right. And if we can build an AI that can use different tools, then we are probably lot more step closer to achieving AGI, right? And
Yes.
I think that's the primary sort of North Star metric we have in our mind, for like all of us have in our mind in the company. Yeah.
So these are like mini agents doing work for you. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. These are mini
I
agents
think
doing work for you.
yeah, I think with AI, my tool usage has increased 2x. Now I use multiple tools with generative AI, so I know it definitely can make a huge impact on the workflow. Yeah,
Right.
that's a great insight. So FlowWorks is at the forefront of generative AI. So could you specify the kind of models or the backbone of your chatbot, Flowy? Like, additionally, how do you ensure this Flowy not only understands but also accurately execute complex tasks? In a very complex sales domain, for example.
Right. Yeah, I think you rightly pointed out the question. I think that's probably the crux of the technology we are building here, right? Um, so if I have to summarize this one line, the whole technology is about transforming human natural language to
Yes.
certain other language, let's say it's API language or certain other language that these different tools or application understands, right? Which then
Yes.
can be executed, right? And like if I talk about the problem, the first solution that comes to our mind is called GPT-4 or GPT-3.5 function calling, right?
Yeah.
But I think two of the greatest drawbacks of current function calling architecture is first of all accuracy, right? I think even like few hundred shots in context learning of GPT-4 function calling doesn't go beyond 30 or 40% accuracy in almost any kind of circumstances, right? And second, which is even more important, I would say, is latency, right? So what
Yeah.
generally happens, most of the function calling involves um, outputting a JSON response or certain sort of structured response, which is very token heavy, right?
Yeah.
And because these language models generate tokens sequentially, it means that, the turnaround time, right, when the user gives a query and he gets output of, the JSON response is easily, right, 15, 30, even 15, 30 seconds or even 1 minute, right?
Seconds. Yeah.
Now contrast this experience with, just working on, let's say, UI of the tool, right? It's almost instant. You click a button, it gets your tasks done, right? But if you have to wait for 30 seconds or 1 minute to get certain action done, then that's really not the user interface. That's not a step forward. That's literally
Yeah.
multiple step backwards, right? So these are the two key challenges we are solving. First is accuracy, and second is latency, right? And the way we have, solved it is breaking down the whole monolithic architecture into multiple smaller sort of mesh of agents, right? Now, without going
Okay.
into too much detail, what it does is that it effectively sort of employs multiple smaller models that perform
Got it.
smaller tasks in the whole chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is, because each of the agents are performing smaller tasks, we now have more controllability and debuggability,
Yes.
right? What goes wrong, and then we can improve accordingly. Contrast this with a very, sort of monolithic architecture that there's
Yes.
just a GPT-4 and there is response and then there is JSON output. There is literally very limited control of how you can improve the results of this, right? Because you
Yeah.
don't really have too much of hands in between the model to figure out
Mm-hmm.
things and debug things, right? So that's obviously number one thing, that we have broken down this whole monolithic architecture into a mesh of agents that communicate
Got
with
it.
each other, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore gives much higher, like I would say more than even 100% increase in accuracy. We are
Mm-hmm.
shortly releasing a white paper, so I think the results should speak for themselves. And second thing, because now there are multiple smaller agents, there is a lot more scope of parallelizability, doing pre-processing,
Yes.
and different other things that drastically reduce the latency from like obviously latency is spoken more in terms of token per second, but if I have to speak in terms of actual user facing seconds, so from 15 to 30 seconds is like right now it's around 5 seconds, right? So that's basically, I think, the core piece of technology that we think, right, is probably going to be the market standard going forward for anyone building something on tool usages.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes sense with the complex scenarios like yours. Thank you for sharing, your tech. Regarding the users, right? User feedback, how user feedback, it, helps you track products. Can you share more about your current user base and the experience with the Flowy beta? Like, what are some key learnings that you gathered with your early customers?
Absolutely, yeah. So I released the product around a couple of months back with a certain set of functionalities, and we really found great sort of I think deeper usage in the product, right? In terms of people using Flowy and reducing the usage of their CRM softwares, right?
Wow,
So
yeah.
we have seen companies that have used Flowy and says, okay, now I see almost all of my reps and account manager using Flowy to update CRM rather than going to CRM, right? And there's been great sort of, I would say, satisfaction seeing that figure. But we also understood few other metrics as well, right? In fact, few other different insights, I would say, right? So we figured that obviously CRMs and other tools that we're targeting initially for sales domain, they still have a lot of structure in their
Yes.
databases, right? It's still a structured
Yeah.
database, right? But salespeople also use a lot of email correspondence, right? Which is like totally unstructured, right?
Yes.
And the customer insight we got is that obviously it's great you're giving us CRM UI through Flowy, but if you can give similar sort of UI for managing my emails, right? Let's say I want to write, hey, show me the quotes I sent to XYZ customers last week. It finds emails and just gives you the quote directly on Slack, right?
Got it.
So that means you now have the ability to search up highly unstructured database, right? And can give you information right in just on your Slack, right? And this
Got
is
it.
one insight we got, right? Can we have Flowy perform all these different intelligent actions and searches on unstructured database like emails? And that's, in fact, that's another thing we are building today, right? Hopefully coming soon. So I think this has been probably the greatest insight.
Wow, that's really good. So, how many integrations do you have with Flowy right now?
So currently we are focusing on the major sales tech companies, Salesforce, HubSpot,
Yeah.
Google suite of softwares like Gmail, Calendars, Google Doc Drives. Like these are, I think, 6, 7 applications we're currently connected with. In coming few months, probably in coming 2 to 3 months, we'll be integrating a lot with other sales tools like Outreach, maybe Apollo or different other tools, right? Essentially
Yeah.
making sure that we cover the whole sales use case. That's the near-term goal. Obviously, the end goal probably in about 1 year is to ship, package the whole product in some sort of SDK format where
Got it.
developers of any apps or any platform can build their own sort of
Oh,
Flowy on top of their softwares. Obviously, to
got it.
build their own UI, build their own Flowy UI on their softwares, but also to interact with other softwares in their similar domains, right? Right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So that's something we are going very fast towards, right?
I think that's the most efficient way to do it, rather, focusing on each domain that would consume a lot
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
time and
Yeah.
effort from your end. Got it.
Yeah.
So talking about the competitive landscape, so one of the article mentions that interoperability across multiple application is your key advantage for FlowWorks. Like, could you give us examples of how Flowy facilitate this, and how do you think your positioning, FloWorks positions against larger competitors?
Right. So so I would say broadly, the domain is sort of very new, right? AI
Mm-hmm.
as an action agent is a very new domain, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
obviously, the business problem you're solving is, how to be efficient in sales or how to be generally be efficient at your workplaces in terms of using tools is an agile problem, right? Like CRM itself is solve this problem, right? Jira solves this problem, right?
Yes.
Now we don't see ourselves replacing all these different tools, right? Just to be clear, we see ourselves as the communicator with these tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, like if these ecosystem of tools increase, we see our usage also increase over the time, right? Now, coming to your question of interoperability, right? Now, you might have seen there are some companies bringing their own sort of quote unquote copilot kind of thing for their own product, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Which basically lets their users interact with their software using natural language.
Yes.
We definitely differentiate from them in terms of, for the users, from the end of the user, being able to operate with not just one software, but with different other softwares,
But multiple.
all in one go.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple softwares. But you might ask, why is that important, right? So I'd go back to the first sort of opening line I have said, is that today, let's take sales as an example. The sales data is distributed is just not localized in your CRM. It's distributed in 10 to 15 different applications: CRM, Gmail, Calendar, Outreach, LinkedIn Navigator, and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And that means you need a system that can effectively communicate with all these different systems at once and can also exchange information between these two, right? And that's where we differentiate ourselves.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So that's a lot about Flowy. It's very good to know about how you're, building this workflow management tool. Before leaving, I would want to definitely ask you one question about your YC experience.
Absolutely.
So congratulations on being part of YC. What were your biggest takeaways from the YC experience? Like, how has the seed funding helped you accelerate your growth?
Sure. I think the biggest takeaway from YC definitely has been the community, I would say, right? So when you go into YC, you go with, let's say, 200 odd other companies in the batch, right? So you obviously don't interact, you can't obviously interact with all 200 companies, but you like there are like obviously YC organized events, YC organized office hours, group office hours and stuff like that, but you can get to interact with a lot of them, right? And first of all, you realize that you are not alone in this journey, right? So that really helps mentally, obviously. But even more importantly is that you can feed off each other's energy and experience and learnings, right? Because so these are pack of 200 sort of companies that maybe I'm not saying that they are the best in the world, but probably near about that, right? And you sort of it also fast tracks a lot of your progress, right? So let's say someone in the batch has some experience of doing something, right? Maybe even as simple as building an LLM application or something, right? It's a very open community. They post the experience there on the internal forum, and we get to learn from that, right? So next time I try building something, like I do not need to go through those steps of experimentation again. I already have that, right? So it's a community. I think it's kind of like a secret society, right? That is really binding, really helpful, really selfless, right? That really helps. On top of that, right, we get to have dedicated office hours with YC partners, right? Right. I think these are really brutal, honest, and I'd say probably the most transparent 20, 30-minute conversation I have had with any VCs, right? Right. And I think thirdly, if you're trying to sell in US, if you're building a SaaS product or trying to sell in US, YC itself has a lot of SaaS companies that you can reach out to for the SEO understanding of the market or even selling, right? So that also helps. Sort of it, I think it gives a huge, I would say, head start into the US market if you're looking to sell it.
Got it. Thank you for that insight. I think that was my last question. Thank you, Sudipta, for joining and providing listeners with information how Flowy works. Yeah, we are really happy to have you, and yeah, thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks, Lakshmi, again for inviting me and providing me the platform to sort of share my thoughts and insights about whatever I know. Really great chatting with you, and
Yeah,
let's stay in touch. Yeah.
sure. See you then.
All right. All right.